Welcome to Savage Planet's vlog. Here we explore speculative media, introduce new writers, and classic authors of science fiction and beyond. Today, we're going to speak about Stanislaw Lem, the greatest sci-fi writer you never read. Or maybe you have. If not, you should. They have translated his work into 50 languages, so access shouldn't be an issue. Born in 1921 in Lvov, in the middle of a war between the province's proprietor Poland and Russia, he lived under many oppressive regimes during his lifetime. They currently fight over the same area known as Lviv, between the forces of Russia and Ukraine. Stanislaw Lem wrote in Polish, was born a Jew, but to survive the Russians, the Nazis, and then the Russians again, he abandoned his culture and religion. It is hard enough to write a novel, but when they force you to bend to the will of the censors of the extreme left or of the extreme right to get your work even published, your first novels are usually not your best, or even what you intended. So Stanislaw Lem forced himself into a genre where he had an additional degree of freedom, science fiction, and for that we're blessed. During his prolific period in the 60s and 70s, Stanislaw Lem wrote 17 novels, his most famous being Solaris. They had made it into a 4-hour movie directed by Tarkovsky in 1972 in Russian, a version that Lem truly hated. They argued during its production in Moscow. It took liberties with the book, introduced characters that didn't exist, and Stanislaw Lem could not abide it. Steven Soderbergh then remade the film Solaris in 2003 into a 2-hour movie with George Clooney. Lem felt that this version of the story centered too much on the love interest between Kelvin and Hari. Lem felt it was too emotional and less focused on the morals that he wanted to explore, but he enjoyed watching it. Solaris, the book, though, is a masterpiece. It explores human ethics and philosophy, which is present in almost all his books. Stanislaw Lem believed in the freedom of thought and ideas that took him beyond existentialism. In Solaris, he explored the psychology of a man faced with first contact. The story kicks off with astronomer, scientist, and psychologist Chris Kelvin landing on the planet of Solaris, which is covered in an ocean but no landmass. It shook Kelvin to his core when, out of nowhere, someone violates his mind, bringing back a new or suppressed memory of his old lover Hari, who is long since dead. Still, the terror of this is nothing when compared to the horror Kelvin feels when he realizes the planet he is standing on creates those memories to communicate with him. In another set of novels, the Injun Tishi trilogy, we see a man who must adapt to the society as it changes around him. The only thing he can control is how he wears his clothes. Many critics consider this to be an autobiographical trilogy. In still another of his most famous novels, The Siberiad, we see Lem's humor. It is a series of short stories graphing the narratives of people faced with odd situations. It is a sort of divine comedy that achieves its purpose with only two cute and ambiguous creatures, two robot cyborg entities named Trurl and Claupicius as narrators. They serve as commentators confounded by the illogical nature of humankind. Besides his science fiction, Stanislaw Lem wrote several philosophical treatises while living in the West and in Berlin. Summa Technologia is probably his most famous, a large work on the border of philosophy and sociology and of science and futurology. It discusses our responsibility as a society in pursuing knowledge through research. For a while, they recognized Stanislaw Lem as a provisional member of the SFWA, or Science Fiction Writers Association, but when he came up for full membership, they refused him because of his communist upbringing. Ursula Le Guin challenged this decision and was his champion with the SFWA, but they relented. However, because of the controversy, Stanislaw Lem never accepted membership that they offered. partially because he hated American science fiction in its entirety, all except Philip K. Dick's writing. During later interviews in 2005, Lem expressed his disappointment with the genre of science fiction and his general pessimism regarding technical progress a year before his death. At heart, he was an intellectual and tried his best to express himself during times of strife. We are lucky he picked this genre, but saddened that he fell into despair at the end of it regarding his life. Yet, his body of work lives on and is worthy of your time and reading.